uncovered evidence of chemical weapons attacks by President Assad against his own people. And now they're tirelessly working to track, verify, or debunk information surrounding the war in Ukraine. Christo Grozev is Bellingcat's executive director and lead Russia investigator, and he's joining me now. Christo, welcome to the program. Obviously, Russia is what you work on most, and particularly now. What would you say you got from my conversation with Dmitry Peskov right now about what's going on the ground?
First thing I got is that you have extreme patience, and I admire you. I would not have been able to sustain that conversation. But what I understand is that Mr. Peskov is probably not really aware of what Russia's strategy is, and what Russia's revised strategy after the initial failures is, because his answers did not make any sense. And I do think that reflects a broader understanding that only a very small group of people, post-Putin, most militarized Sildics or power elite, are aware of what he thinks. And probably that is not extent to Mr. Peskov. But what we do is we try to track the evidence of war crimes or evidence of civilian harm. We focused nearly 100% of Bellingcat's activity since the start of the war into that. We sometimes divert into debunking the random claim that Russia puts out or Ukraine puts out, regardless which country puts forward unsupported claims. But essentially, all of our efforts are currently focused on chronicling, logging, and preserving for judicial investigations evidence of civilian harm. So that's what we do now.
So before I get to those details, can I just ask you whether you also see what American intelligence seems to be seeing? They say somewhere, between 7,000 and maybe 9,000 Russian soldiers have been killed. They're also suggesting that a number of generals have been killed. Are you able at all to open source or geolocate any of that?
This is not our main activity. We did start at the beginning tracking casualties from the Russian side, but we have to focus fully on tracking civilian harm. The numbers that are put forward by the Ukrainian side, which is about 12,500, are a bit high based on what we see. We do see numbers that are more in the 8,000 to 10,000 range, and we understand that domestically within the Russian military command, they're also acknowledging about 5,000 deaths at this point. This comes from several sources inside Russia to us, and I do think that 8,000 to 9,000 is the right number at this point.
Can you talk to me about the civilian targeting? I mean, the Russians are absolutely clear in everything they tell the world: we do not target civilian infrastructure, and yet we see before our eyes what's happened to Mariupol, what civilian targets are hit in other cities, including in Kyiv, and the number of dead and wounded. But there's a very sophisticated way that they have of saying, well, this person is a fake and that person is a fake, and it was all actors and it was all staged. Can you get beyond that, given that there's not many independent journalists in Mariupol?
We try to. So far, we've gathered more than 400 incidents of civilian harm. Of those, about 10%, 40 of them represent egregious civilian harm incidents, which could have been prevented, should have been prevented with due care and compliance with military rules of engagement. What we're seeing here is a neglect on the Russian side of the traditional military rules of engagement that are meant to avoid civilian casualties. Every war will have collateral damage of civilian casualties. What is particular here is that the Russian side does not make the effort, and one may believe that actually it's part of their strategy to terrorize the population in order for pressure to build up on the government to come to some sort of a compromise with Kremlin. But what we see is not only evidence of targets that have zero military infrastructure importance, such as schools, hospitals, and theaters, as we have seen recently, administrative buildings, but we also see some explanation for why that is happening. There are a lot of intercepted phone calls that are being published by the Ukrainian security services, and we were able to verify a small portion of that, the ones where they publish also the phone numbers of the calling parties. And we hear a lot of Russian officers and soldiers talking to their loved ones in Russia, complaining about the plight that they're in, and actually informing their wives or their spouses that they've been given instructions to ignore the duty of care, to in their line of view. And this would explain also the total well, the neglect for civilian casualties when artillery or other missile shelling is implemented.
Well, that is quite extraordinary information to be able to have. Just very briefly and finally, you did a lot of investigation, Bellingcat did, in Syria, and you saw the pattern. Are we seeing some of the same pattern now?
Yes, we're seeing a pattern of, well, first of all, disinformation and continuous industrial scale fabrication of fakes. What we're seeing is a slightly different direction of the fakes coming from the Russian government. They're mostly meant for a domestic audience. They kind of have given up on trying to convince the world. They did make some ludicrous claims, such as the Russian ambassador to the Netherlands showed up on a program on Dutch TV and claimed that that two different women who were victims in the Mariupol maternity hospital, one of whom died, he showed the photographs of these completely two different women and claimed that both of them are a crisis actor, the same one at that. So they're doing some ill-advised international attempts, but most of this information is targeting a domestic audience. What we see is also terrorizing civilian, particular emotional effects, such as hospitals, and I think that may be part of the strategy to terrorize the population as opposed to an incident.
Thank you so much for being with us, Christo Broza. Thank you very much for Bellingcat.